Awesome. Well, I'm gonna back away and let you take it from here, but look forward to chatting with you at the end.
All right, cool. All right, so this cam, my name's Wade Wells. So I'm just going to show you how to map your network to the Mitre attack framework. Um, the key goals here I was trying to really do was use the Mitre attack framework for a little bit more blue team rather than red team. What I've always noticed is it's always when I first saw Mitre, it was very red. So my main goal was how do I use it for just blue or a little bit purple here and there, which you'll see. So my talk covers, let's see, got a little bit of GIFs running around. My talk covers 3 open source tools, which are the Attack Navigator, Detect, and the Atomic Red Team. Uh, all three are open source and free and on GitHub. Super easy to set up, and almost 2 of them use the same language for programmatically, which is really easy. So my big thing was to tell you the story. My boss gave me the goal of figuring out what can we detect and how do we keep track of what we can detect, which turns out to be a much bigger question than what I originally thought it was. I thought it was going to be easy and blow through it. It wasn't. Um, with answering those, I also wanted to try to figure out what framework I was going to use, which you can see I used Mitre ATT&CK. Then also, can I tie threat intel into there too, which is another second part of my job. So just to go over the Mitre ATT&CK for basic outline, right? It's based off the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. Pretty simple. Go across, not anything too crazy, right? So everyone knows how it works. There's techniques and tactics, right? So there's 11 tactics and around 245 techniques in the enterprise Mitre attack framework, right? So those 11 tactics are right there on the frame. And just to give you a quick reference on what the Mitre attack looks like completely, is this is what it looks like, right? So I originally chose Mitre attack just because the language is all there. Everything's pretty decent. You can always find information on it. All the security tools right now all have alerting already based on it. So it felt like a huge head start for me to use this.
And
So
it fits so beautifully in a slide.
right, I know. Oh my God, you should. I'll tell you horror stories at the end of this.
All right.
um, so, so this is the original attack framework with the 11 tactics up top and then going down is the techniques. So my first thing was, how am I going to display what I'm detecting out of this, right? And I really struggled with that right off the bat. And so I made Confluence pages, which I soon found was not scalable whatsoever. So for each technique, for each tactic, I made a Confluence page. And then in that page, I put the techniques. So one tactic has about 50 techniques. So me writing all that out by hand was horrible. So if you drop down, here's just an example of what I was writing there. Originally, I was trying to throw Sigma, if you know what that is. If you don't worry about it. It's just like a basic alerting platform. It's an alerting language I can transform to multiple tools. I was using that in here and tracking it all, giving a little bit of information. My key goal was to make it so that anybody could go in here, read it, understand where the alert was, uh, what the alert is doing, and then also I thought it would be good for just cross team, just so anyone in the team can go look. And then if we hired anybody new on, they could easily understand this and then have a link out to that Mitre attack technique or tactic and really understand what this alert is looking for and what it's doing and maybe how to go about triaging it better. Or, yeah. So my first big aha moment was fighting the Mitre attack navigator. So the Mitre attack navigator runs in an iframe in your browser. It consumes these JSON files that display information on that big old Mitre attack you saw earlier. You can run it yourself, or you can use Mitre's version of it, which is super simple, but it depends if do you want to upload your data to that type, upload your data to it, which shouldn't be too bad because it's running in your browser, but that's a bit big up to you. So this is what it looks like. I definitely scrunched it down just so you can view it more, right? This is just TTPs of a known APT. So you can see that it's using it more as a threat intel model rather than a blue team, right? What tactics do the Zerg use and what are they known for? So the nice thing is if you hover over these tactics, you can right click on it and then go view it in Mitre's website, which is super nice. And then also that gives you a little bit more information. And then if you could have multiple APTs on there, like this, you can then compare and contrast the two APTs together. So there's the Zerg and the Protoss. What Zerg's red, Protoss is blue, and yellow is both, right? And you could hover your mouse over there and it'll tell you, hey, they use this. Sometimes you can also use that information to put the software they're using in there. The great thing about Mitre as well is they carry a repository of known APTs and their TTPs. So you can start off, what I did is I started off there, read what Mitre had, read all their reports, and then fine-tuned it with my own threat intelligence on the back end, which definitely helped a lot more. Added a couple more TTPs, maybe got rid of some old ones. But then again, you also have to remember threat intelligence is always like up in the air and never take it for granted type of thing. So after seeing this attack viewer, I really realized that I wanted to use this in order to track what I was detecting. So it just takes JSON files. I started editing the JSON files myself and uploading them to this to see stuff. And I quickly realized like I could write something to do this. After realizing I'm not a good programmer, I started looking up to see if somebody else wrote something to do this. And I found this awesome tool called Detect, right? So Detect helps you map your tools, your logging and your detection, and upload it to that Mitre Attack Navigator. So it runs in Python 3. It takes simple YAML files to edit, and all of it's automated. There's a script, there's a backend, not a backend, I'm sorry. There's a Python script to help you go through it, and it's not too crazy, but sometimes it's a little daunting. So just to show how it works, on the upper right is just when you run the Python script, it gives you some information on how to do it. So originally those YAML files come in 3 different flavors. So the main one I think is really the data sources administration file, right? So that file holds all the data sources that Mitre says you should be consuming or you should have in order to track the tactics and techniques that the attackers are using. So this quick example right here is just, what is it? Let's see, process monitoring, right? You do that and you go through it and you grade it. So to give you an example of all the data sources, these are, I think it's around 51 different data sources that you're gonna have to grade. This is probably the hardest part of this whole thing, is grading these data sources and understanding the logs that either you're taking in or that you can go see, and then grading them on a 1 to 4 scale. So Detect already has some grading for you. So a 1 to 4, right? I really didn't use their grading, more of just for simplicity. I understood it, but you don't really need to read this. So here again is another really good example of process monitoring, right? So if you see, it says shows product, it shows is it available in analytics, and then there's device completeness, device field completeness, timeliness, retention, and consistency. So you'll add a 0 to 4 on there, and it comes out to a really pretty graph that looks something like this. So in the bottom right-hand corner is that legend. It'll show you pretty much the darker the grade, right, the better your data sources is. So here are all of our attacks and techniques, and here's all the logs that I'm taking in. It's really nice. If you hover over it, it'll actually tell you a little bit about the metadata, right? So here's an example of credential dumping, the attack, and then what type of data sources that you should be consuming to see that, and then also your grading. Then it still does the same thing. If you right click on that, it'll then take you to the Mitre's attack page in order to maybe understand it a bit further. The second file you're gonna wanna look at, let's see, is the detect file, right? So you detect, after you fill out that initial YAML file, detect will that you run detect, and then it spits out all those scores into this detect file. This detect file is mainly to track what you're detecting and grading your alerting, not the logging. So make that separation. Once again, here's another example of signed binary process execution, right? Shows the location, what devices it's applicable to, a date, which is important a little bit later, the score, and then the comments. What I did in the comments was that I actually added those alert names. So one thing I did with my network is I made all the alert names relatable to Mitre attack framework as well. So to give you an example, I'd put that T code, so T1218, and then the alert would be feed icon sign binary process execution, right? So here shows all my alerts. So that one technique actually has around 6 alerts, which gets a little rough. Then it also has your visibility scoring in, which is from that past logging and detection file, the administration YAML file. So they have a quick file scoring for this as well, just to help you out if you need a little help to understand how you should be grading. So -1 is none, 0 is forensics, right? 5 is the best. So once you make that second file, you pump it through detect, it gives you the JSON file in order to read in the attack navigator. And this is what comes out, right? So once again, the lighter shades of green are what I kind of detect, and the darker green is what I'm feeling really strong in, and the blue is more of a forensics. I have it on the host and I can pull it if needed. I found this to be super awesome. Now I know exactly what I am detecting, and then I can show this to my boss and be like, hey, this is what we're detecting, easily viewable. So what I did is I stood up an attack viewer, that attack viewer server, and then had this file always up so our team could go and look and see this and see what our detections are. It's the same thing as the other one. You can highlight it and it shows you some more metadata. So like the detection score, maybe what product is detecting that, and then you could add some more comments as well. So one of the hardest things that I found was actually editing those YAML files. The first thing I did was send that YAML file to my team and said, hey, fill this out, send it back to me. Well, first only one guy sent it back to me, and then when he sent it back to me, he screwed up the YAML formatting, so I couldn't even use it, which was rough. So what I had to do is manually transfer his scores and then average them out with my scores and then fill out a complete new YAML file. What's really nice is the dudes who make detect actually made a editor in order for to do this all in the browser. It's super simple. It'll edit both that administration file and the detecting file and goes through it and pumps it out for you. Super simple. They just came out with this. So the last thing really is having your detection and your logging, right? So to give it, here's the example is my visibility is my logging and the orange is what I'm detecting, right? So same thing, it shows you that metadata of everything, and now you can really understand where your gaps are in your detection and that where you have those logs where you can build up that detection. Another great thing about detect is that remember that those dates that you put in the detection file can actually make a graph. What's nice about this graph is it shows your progress, right? All the C-level people love to see progress, love to see colors, and love to see what's going on. So one thing to keep in mind with this is that this is based off the techniques that you filled out, not the alerts you created. To go back to that binary process execution, I wrote 6 alerts for that one binary process execution, but technically it was only one technique. So on the side, I was keeping track of how many alerts I wrote and then how many techniques I was writing. So this example, I think I had around like 26 techniques covered and around 60 alerts written, which was a little bit daunting, but was great to show my progress and easy to show it, right? So the last thing, another thing that the tech does is it will create heat maps of APTs. So to give an example, I'm pretty sure this is all the Iranian APTs. And this was like when Iran was popping off and everyone was scared. So I took all of the Mitre attack information about all the Iranian APTs, threw them into Detect, and they created this heat map for you to show you where what techniques that they're most likely going to use, right? Super nice. Same with the metadata, shows you which groups use it. Was super helpful. I sent it out to a couple people. Everyone really liked it. So the last thing that I really wanted was how do I take that detection and logging file beforehand and then meld it with this, right? So detect also does that, which is super nice. Oh, sorry, one too many. So this is that. So the green being the detections, the red being what the APTs are using, and the orange being what I'm detecting that the APTs are using, right? So this is really good for gap analysis. So when that Iranian stuff happened, I had both those files, merged them together and said, hey, here's where we're covered, here's where we're not, here's where we should maybe make some new alerts in. For example, like this one, I would say remote file copy is definitely something you should be tracking, especially if it's a high used TTP that from an attacker. Same thing, shows all the metadata that you had. So for the groups and the detection scoring, and then even the visibility scoring. So I know my detection score is a 1, but my visibility score is a 3. Maybe I can increase that somehow. That was something I really enjoyed doing, and something you could easily do with both of these tools. The third thing I really thought about this was helping other people set this up. And for example, I had a buddy who didn't have as much security tools as you would hope. And so when he filled it out, this is what he filled out. After the scoring and logging, he showed his boss. His boss was like, "Oh yeah, it looks great. Looks like we're really detecting a lot there." And then he goes, "Hey, if we actually bought this tool and this tool, we would actually have detecting like this." So what this does is it really displays what you need to those sea levels, right? They always love graphical, they love colors. They're not about the numbers as much unless it's money, but this really shows what's going on. And he was ordered, after showing him that and showing the comparison, he was actually able to get funding for some more security tools, which was really awesome. So having all these logging and detection is great, right? So I know what I'm logging, I know what I'm detecting. My last bit of it was, how do I verify that I am logging and detecting at those grading levels, right? So the tool that I decided to use was the Atomic Red Team, just because it was so simple. I tried a couple other ones, such as Caldera, but it was a little bit more troublesome. But the Atomic Red Team, all I did was pull down their GitHub repo and just started running it. What was really nice about it is it also runs in Python 3, which is the same thing that Detect runs. So I already had that going for me. It does have a little bit of automation for me, a little bit of automation for you to run those tools. It's not hard to run, but I felt that running the actual attacks myself really showed me how the attack works, as well as creating those true positives in my detecting platforms. It worked out really well, and I just learned a lot from actually attacking and breaking stuff, which goes a little bit from what I normally do. Um, so to give you a little bit of an example, uh, they actually have they have 2 files, right? They have YAML files as well, which is the same thing as Detect uses. And you can go through and read it and understand how the attack works. And they actually have copy paste the commands, or they have automation in Python, Ruby, and PowerShell. So I was using the Python version, super simple. You just type in the code. So for example, the T1105, which is remote file copy, and it lists all the attacks that you have. What was super easy, you just give it a number and it attempts to run that attack. Sometimes you'll fall into some pitfalls, right? And it doesn't work, and you have to figure out what it's going to do. But overall, it works really easily. I had a lot of fun doing it. After this, I started using it with their PowerShell module, which was even simpler, which also gave me a little bit more of an idea how I can automate it across my platform just using PowerShell module. Of course, you could use any other tools like this. There's a couple paid for ones out there, like Scythe, right? And I've never used any of the paid for tools, but I've just used this so much. It's so simple. Um, a couple of things I don't have a slide for was automation wise. Um, so editing that file was a little bit of a hassle all the time. So, and then uploading it to the attack framework. One thing I did for automation was I put it in GitHub, and then I just made a box that what it does is it pulls down that YAML file from the administration and detection files from YAML, pulls it down, runs detect, and then throws it back up to attack. And that'll update once a day. A little bit more automation I was thinking about was actually going into your alerting platform, reading through your alert names, and then editing that detection file. This is some stuff I haven't really done yet, but I'm looking at doing it. And just because I haven't had the time, especially with all this going on. And that's it for my talk. I'd like to say a big thanks to Mitre ATT&CK for releasing all their cool stuff. Detect, both Marcus and Ruben, if you guys ever use Detect, just shout them out. They made the tool and it's phenomenal. I would highly suggest anyone using it. And Red Canary, also just awesome tools. And then that's it for me. If you have any questions, my Twitter handle is waiting through logs. You can just hit me up, or I'll be in the Discord all day today. This is super simple to set up. It takes around took me around a month, but if I can explain it, I got someone to set it up within 30 minutes. And the hardest thing is just setting up doing those logging file, those 2 YAML files. But once you have that, it's awesome and it works out well. Thank you.
Wow. Detect. Who knew?
Yeah, right? Who knew?
That seems
Not me.
really useful. I mean, attacks always seem like this overwhelming, awful thing to fit on a slide. Truly, like that's how I've thought
Yeah.
about it. But a tool that brings it all together, makes it useful, allows you to collaborate with Mitre's information. I heard that in there somewhere.
Yeah. So
Um,
a couple of things I didn't go for. Mitre actually has it has all that threat intel that you can already throw in there, but they also have a lot of cool stuff where they grade tools and actually show you like, hey, here's Carbon Black, here's Falcon, and here's how they hold up to the Mitre attack framework. That was really cool that I found, and I didn't realize they did that.
Nice. Yeah,
But
no, that is so cool. Seeing not only what you see, but where your analysis is weak and the
and,
C-level aids to go
and
as
comparing that
well,
to your threat intel, right? It's like
right?
it's like, how do I write a title for this? There's too much.
Okay, so I live to break things, but go blue. Holy crap, that's awesome. Especially with the APT heat maps,
Yeah.
drawing those things into reality. The ability to communicate well to the people in charge helps everyone do their jobs better.
Oh yeah.
And the visualization, that's so cool. Who was your mentor? Somebody actually asked, and they I think they said, who was the mentor? That your slide deck was brilliant. That was a great recommendation.
Liz.
Elizabeth Wharton.
Yeah.
Yep.
She definitely I was originally not going to use a cool slides like this. I was going to use just like I have the same slides but without the GIFs. And so she's like, "No, you need to use this. Like this is great." And I'm like, "All right." I'm like, "I don't know if it's copyright protected or if I'm going to get hit from Blizzard, but if I do, she's a lawyer, so I can go back." But
Right. No doubt. Let's see. We do have a few comments. Woo StarCraft. That seems to be the most prevalent. Um, you must construct additional pylons.
So when I originally gave the talk, I had a bunch of StarCraft themed jokes going through it. And so this was at my local B-sides, and I did a bunch of the puns, like, oh, if you really want your network to be like power overwhelming, or like if you no one got them. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna skip the StarCraft jokes.
Oh man, no. I mean, the reason that I got Command and Conquer and StarCraft mixed up is because I'd play them in the same night, like
Oh yeah,
way
then
back in the day.
those are pretty much like the original RTSs, right? Those in Warcraft. So
Yeah.
I played both of those. I don't doubt you whatsoever.
So Mike, actually, Evil Bit from earlier asked, how are you able to keep up with the attack changes, such as the new sub techniques that were recently released?
So
Is it still
this
around?
doesn't go. So I should have said this at the beginning. This doesn't go into sub techniques yet, just because that's still in a beta. From what I can tell, is all of it. I'm pretty sure everyone's going to transform to that sub techniques format. So they already have attack viewer in sub techniques. I'm pretty sure I could edit those JSON files to fill out the sub techniques pretty easily. But a little bit, it is still a little vague just because it's in the beta and the other tools haven't really caught up to that yet. But that's something I can't wait for, just because it shrinks that map so much
Sure.
and it looks so much better.
So Merrill asks, when he said, quote, stood up a server so anyone else could check the coverage at any time, unquote, was that also in Confluence, or how did he do
No,
that?
so yeah, excellent question. So originally what I did is I just did a free AWS server. I put the attack viewer in there, and I also put detect on that. And then since the attack viewer runs as an iframe, you can embed it into things. So I embedded it into Confluence. So I turned like 30 pages into one, and you could just view that, and you could actually manipulate it from there. There's actually a lot of control via the attack viewer that you can navigate, and you can also throw that threat intel from the attack viewer. Has an option just like, hey, show me this APT, and it'll just like, boop, there you go.
Nice. Kevin
Yeah.
says, this is a great presentation, exclamation point. I've been using Mitre ATT&CK internally for a bit, but I haven't examined Detect yet. Love it. Awesome. Cool. Jason himself, Jason Blanchard, the guy who he's like
Yeah,
the guy behind the scenes all
I know
running
Jason.
this whole thing. Jason
He's been
Blanchard
meaning to
says
email me.
he says great presentation.
Thank you.
Um,
He's been my he's been the person I've been looking up to, just reading all of his watching his YouTube videos and then his Twitch stream, and then trying to write my 20 blog posts before I release my website. I
Dude,
thank him.
Jason's awesome, isn't he?
Yeah,
No doubt.
super
No
awesome.
doubt. And again, the very common, will these slides be posted anywhere online?
So a very similar version to this, because this is the newest version, it's on my GitHub. It's just if you look up waiting through logs on GitHub, they're in my just talks, I think, folder. If you go through my GitHub, you're gonna find some stuff, but remember, don't use everything in there because I've also been studying deception technology. So they're all there. They're also I have a couple posts on my Twitter of the StarCraft slides as well. The thing is, this StarCraft deck is like 30 megs, so I can't upload it as a presentation because it's too big. So it's just in a file format, like pictures, PDF.
All right, and don't click on links that you don't trust. Should they trust
Yeah,
the
don't
links
click
in
on
your
links
site?
and don't use keys you don't trust. Let's just say that, all right?
ASN1 is such a beautiful thing.
Oh,
Anyway,
canary tokens. I'm just having fun with them.
right. Well, great job, Wade. Really appreciate you putting this together. And we will take a brief break. We'll start back up here in about 10 minutes, 5 to the hour, and get into the next speaker.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to exit out. So hopefully you take over everything.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah, bye.